Hello and welcome to this 29th day of December 2021. A very, very historic day. Well, it's wrong because it's only a few days left to go in this year. Well, it's been wonderful having your company throughout the year and it's great news. So today we begin by looking at this series, the Ashes. So Australia has retained the Ashes. Yes, isn't that wonderful? Well, as we know that the series has been a much watched one and a lot of challenges because of COVID. So Australia has retained the Ashes with 2 matches to spare after the Boxing Day test. Hometown hero Scott Boland destroyed England in an inning victory. The tourists started the day 3 on 4 for 31, still needing 51 runs to make Australia bet again, and were all out for just 68 before lunch at MCG. Mitchell Starc 3 for 29 started the rot when he bowled Ben Stokes before Boland 6-7 did the bulk of the damage in the space of 5 overs. Johnny Brewster went first, tapped LBW before Joe Root was caught by the slips as well and truly end England's hope of bowling on Tuesday. Boland secured his 5-wicket haul when he had Mark Wood caught out and bowled to start his 4th over of the innings with Ollie Robinson dismissed 2 balls later. Australia won by an innings and 14 runs when Cameron Green, a 1 for 8, bowled James Anderson for England's 10th and final wicket. Boland, the second Indigenous man to play Test cricket for Australia, won the Mullock Medal named after the Indigenous cricket great Johnny as the player of the match. Coming here today, I thought we had a good chance of winning, he said. Well, obviously, didn't think it was going to happen that quickly. The Ashes now moves to SCG for the New Year's Test, beginning on January 5, with Australia gunning for their first whitewash since 2013 and 14 series. It's pretty insane when you say it like that, Australian captain Pat Cummins said of being an Ashes winning skipper after 2 matches in charge. Well, an awesome 4 weeks. So proud of the group here and everything's clicked. Everything's worked out. I'm so happy for Scotty in front of his home crowd today. An amazing feeling. So well done, Australia. England, meanwhile, seemingly have little hope of fighting back after another catastrophic performance. I know it was a hard wicket to beat, but I am pretty sure it wasn't a 68 all-out wicket, cricket great Ricky Ponting said, and he said that on Channel 7. Huge scars now, huge dents made in England's team. Root side had their best day of the series on Monday, led by Anderson's 4 wickets, but by stumps they were on the brink of an innings defeat. Credit to Australia, they blew us away last night and they have outplayed us in this match and the series so far, he said after the defeat. So as we know that yesterday even our Premier posted and everyone's been posted. So he said, we've got a lot of hard work to do to make sure we come back strong in the last 2 games. Well, of course, that he has to. And of course, everyone, welcome to the show. Welcome, Devika, Carl, Pramila, and everyone. Thanks so much for joining in and watching today's one. And stay tuned to the end because we got a bonus track coming for you towards the end as well. Well, right now, moving on, let's take a look at what's making news today. Well, of course, the Sydney to Hobart Blackjack sails into Hobart.
Excellent. Yeah, mate. Oh, yeah. Well done.
And congratulations to the team. As we know, it was very hard and tough, and many of the yachts had retired well before, halfway through the race because of the extreme conditions that were there. So well done, Team Blackjack, for that amazing win. And as the skipper mentioned, that it's a feeling that he just cannot describe.
Fantastic.
Very special Rolex. Look at that.
Very, very well deserved. It's not easy, that race there, of course. Well, right now, moving on. How many of you know some different languages? How many languages can you speak? Well, you might be able to speak quite a few languages, but some of us 2 or 3, which is often the case. But can you laugh in different languages? Well, this comedian here can. So well done, Chetan.
My friends, please go nuts and make some noise for Delhi Boy!
Chetan Singh lives for the stage.
And there's like a spotlight and there's a mic, and I feel like this is my zone and I'm protected, and now I can say whatever I like.
Women only like this accent when I'm offering them cheap Vodafone deals.
By night, he's one of the Adelaide comedy scene's rising stars. By day, he works as an IT specialist in the city. His confident stage presence a far cry from a shy schoolboy who grew up in New Delhi.
I wouldn't answer my roll call for like the first 5-6 years of my life, and I think that sort of carried off till much later.
Chetan Singh moved to Adelaide to study, driving taxis initially to help pay the bills. He went on to discover a natural talent for comedy at a work function, and it's taken off from there, even if his wife wasn't convinced.
She never found me funny, but she knew I had a flair for this.
No wonder there's no traffic today outside, because the entire population of Adelaide is right here, right? I mean, these many people, if I was back in my country, this would be like my living room, right? On a really quiet day.
Now he's taking his life experience to an act delivered to audiences in both English and Hindi.
Chetan, you tell me, what would you like me to do?
Singh is now South Australia's Raw comedy winner and is ready for the national final next year.
Experience this, and I want to take my comedy somewhere. I want to, take this seriously, but this is going to be a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
With travel opening up, he's also keen on taking his act to the stages of his homeland.
You've been a lovely audience. Thank you very much.
Matthew Smith, ABC News.
And well done, Chetan. As we now, Sandeep Totlani, you might remember, he was an announcer here with Australian Indian Radio. He does a stand-up comedy right here in Brisbane. He's done quite well. And there's Sekhar as well. He does quite well as well. Of course, these boys, they have done very well. If you look at the story of Chetan coming here as a student, driving taxis, to make a living. Now, by day, he's a computer analyst and IT expert, and by night, he entertains people. Well done. And I hope you all the best for those national contests. Well, right now, look at these numbers and the hospital numbers and things. As we know, we've been following all these numbers throughout. And right now, there's a lot of people with a lot of mixed feelings. Some of the people saying that the lockdowns were, not justified. And then there are people who said, opening up the borders were quite too soon. So where do we stand? So here's some facts and figures, as this guy here does the most amazing job with analyzing the situations there. And with that, I'd like to also welcome Veena all the way from Fiji. Hope things are well in Fiji.
Hospitalisations are climbing in a couple of states, SA for one, but fastest in New South Wales, which has 557 people now in hospital, and that's a number that's nearly doubled in just 1 week. Intensive care admissions are not growing as quickly, at least not for now, and remember, most of the people in ICU are people who have Delta, not Omicron. So if we look at the individual outcomes for each infected person, things do actually look better for each patient now that we're dealing with Omicron and most of us are vaccinated. This chart shows you the number of people in hospital as a share of all of the cases in the state across the past fortnight. So it's a proxy for active cases that lets us make comparisons between states. And in New South Wales, your likelihood of ending up in hospital if you're infected has been steadily dropping since that late October Delta peak through to where we are right now. In Victoria, that percentage is a little bit higher, and that's a state that does seem to have more Delta still than Omicron, at least for now, and that might start to change, especially now we've seen a big spike in case numbers.
Right now we'll cross over to the live media
had
coverage
earlier
in
the year.
Brisbane.
The fifth
They're
cases
ready to
at the
begin.
moment are
We are
Omicron.
ready.
Hey Josh, very good. Is everyone here? I thought some people got delayed.
Now
but
we are ready.
AJ, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Well, good morning everyone. Good morning Queensland. Thanks for tuning in. A lovely day here in Caboolture, and it's my birthday. So there you go, grey hair.
And happy
wrinkles.
birthday.
So good day to do a press conference. Can I start off by thanking Queenslanders for getting out and about and getting vaccinated, for doing the right things with masks and getting tested. First dose, we're now at 90.49%. That's excellent. Excellent, Queenslanders. Well done. And second dose, we're 86.14%. So edging closer to that 90% double dose, which is an important milestone in our roadmap. We've also got, and this is really good news, 0 cases of COVID-19 in ICU. So that is fantastic news. And there was 1,539 new cases of COVID-19, 35,000 tests by Queensland Health yesterday. Now, as we would have seen, the Premier announced this morning, and she's been foreshadowing for the last couple of days, we are moving to rapid antigen tests as a valid test for interstate travellers from COVID-19 hotspots from the 1st of January. What that means is someone today who wants to come to Queensland, because it's within the 72 hours on the 1st of January, you can valid test for you to come into Queensland from today. So no need to line up to get a PCR test. Go and get your rapid antigen test, have the border pass declaration completed, and you can come into Queensland from the 1st of January. Of course, talking about the milestones around 90% double dose, which we're getting very close to. Once we hit 90%, you don't need any test. But until we hit 90% double dose, the rapid antigen test is now a valid COVID-19 test for entry into Queensland from interstate hotspots. So I encourage those people coming to Queensland, consider your options, but certainly a rapid antigen test is a very good option for you. You'll avoid the queues for a PCR. Now, the other important information is, of course, we are continuing to encourage people to go out and get tested if you're feeling unwell. Make sure you get the masks when you're in places where you can't socially distance, and the other requirements around being at certain locations where it is mandatory for you to wear those masks. And please also keep up good hygiene. I'll now hand over to the Chief Health Officer to provide more information around the change today, as well as also the COVID cases. Then we'll hear from the Commissioner, take some questions, and then at the end we've got some really important messages to reinforce about road safety as we're heading into the New Year celebrations. So I encourage you all to stay tuned in until then. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. So today in Queensland we have 1,589 new cases to report. That brings the total to 8,534 since the beginning of the pandemic, and there are 6,368 cases currently active. Despite this substantial number of cases we have active in Queensland, 6,368, we still have no cases in our intensive care units, which clearly indicates that the vaccines are working. But I would encourage anyone who is eligible to go and get their third dose if it's been 5 months since their second dose. It's critical that people go ahead and get their third dose. Now, cases have been statewide, including rural and remote areas. Overnight, a case was detected on Thursday Island. The person involved had done all the right things. They were fully vaccinated, they got tested and then isolated straight away when the test result came back. And that case is currently being managed by the Torres and Cape Hospital and Health Service. But it does remind us that it's critical that everyone in all regions of Queensland, no matter where you are, no matter how remote you might be, that you need to be vaccinated. This can strike us anywhere. At this stage, information is new on this particular patient, but at this stage it appears that he acquired the infection interstate. There were 35,002 tests conducted yesterday. Interestingly, this is actually 3,015 tests more than the day before, despite the fact that we removed the 5-day testing requirement for people returning from interstate. I think this suggests that people have come out over the Christmas period to get tested, and they may well be symptomatic. So that's a good thing. I think it indicates that we're probably able to focus our testing more on those likely to be infected. So it won't surprise me if in the next 24 hours our numbers do increase. Yesterday, when we did remove that mandate for the 5-day test, we had people walking the queues throughout the state to ensure that anyone who was waiting who was waiting to be tested did not require the test. We know in places such as Mackay, Townsville and Cairns there was a reduction in those queues there. In homes, we are managing 976 cases of COVID at the moment. I mentioned before there are no cases of COVID-19 in intensive care or ventilated. And I think this is one of the most critical numbers to monitor when we're getting some gauge of how severe this disease actually is in Queensland, that number of people in intensive care. The number of hospitalised cases is a little bit more complex, and it's difficult to tease apart those people that are in hospital for the management of COVID and those that are there for other reasons. That's why looking at that intensive care number is so particularly useful as a gauge of the severity of the disease. So we do have 93 people in hospital at the moment with COVID-19, but we know that the majority of them are not there because they're being treated for symptoms of COVID-19. We have reports of about 8 or so patients being treated for symptoms. It could be slightly more. As the numbers increase, as the number of patients we see in hospital increases, it gets harder to tease this number out, short of calling every single doctor in every hospital to work out why those patients are there. And we may well change the way we report this in the new year, just to simplify it. The thing that is most useful, I find, to give an indication of how severe this disease is to look at those numbers in intensive care. That really gives us some good idea. I can say that there are I can think of at least 2 older people in their 80s with medical conditions that are not in intensive care but are unwell. That significantly unwell. So this is not a completely benign disease, and so I don't want to give that message at all. And we know, given that we have this Omicron variant dominant in Queensland, that case numbers are going to rise very rapidly in the next few weeks. Interestingly, the Omicron variant is becoming more and more dominant in Queensland. It's probably more dominant in Queensland than any other state in the country. We're now pushing 80% of our cases are Omicron, which is probably good in the grand scheme of things. It's good. It has a downside insofar as it's much more contagious than Delta, but on the good side, it does appear to be a milder disease, particularly for those who are vaccinated. I remain concerned about the older age group. Most of the cases we have seen have been in older people. So it is critical that the older age group get that 3rd dose of vaccine. The vaccination clinic started to reopen yesterday. We administered 888 doses of vaccine yesterday. over 70% of those were third doses, which is good to see, and around 10% are first doses. As at the 27th of December, the vaccination coverage is 90.49% of the 16 plus population having at least one dose, and 86.14% having two doses. I encourage anyone over the age of 12 years to come forward and get vaccinated, and also remind you that it's now possible to book your children aged 5 to 11 years from the 10th of January in to get vaccinated at a Queensland Health Clinic, GP or pharmacy. And finally, just going back to the rat testing, just to reiterate, I advised the Premier that rapid antigen testing was an appropriate form of testing in the current environment for interstate travellers from hotspots like New South Wales, Victoria, travelling to Queensland, and so that will come into force from the 1st of January, this Saturday. Thank you very much.
Doctor, what problems do you foresee with the rat testing in terms of uniformity of quality as judged by the TGA and availability? Do you see anything on the horizon that could create a problem there?
Well, the rapid antigen tests will be supplied from within the state. They will be provided from within the states from which the patients arrive. We will rely on those which have been approved and which are available in those states.
The stock levels are pretty good.
We are led to believe they are in New South Wales. There is no doubt that rapid antigen tests in Queensland at the moment are difficult to obtain. We know that in Queensland. We are led to believe they are available in New South Wales.
When are we expected to hit that 90% double dose?
Sometime in January. We don't have a specific date yet. And as you know, once we reach that 90% dose rate, then we'll stop. Then these requirements are eliminated altogether.
You go in the process around the rat testing. How does it work? Do it just show it similar to what the PCR test was?
So you will perform the rat test within the 72 hours of your time of travel, preferably on the day within 24 hours of travelling, and then you will perform a declaration online using the same declaration process as we've had until now, that you have done that rat test. Once you've done that, if you form the rat test and form the declaration and present it at the border, then you'll be able to enter Queensland.
So it's really an honesty system, isn't it?
It is. I will might refer that question specifically to the Commissioner, who I'd like to speak on this subject, but it is an honesty system, but it is to make a false declaration is a criminal offence.
The New South Wales government is considering slashing the isolation time down to 5 days, given Omicron appears to be less severe. What have you advised the Premier about?
We are meeting on a regular basis about this, including with the AHPPC. We are regularly changing our guidelines. So on that specific issue, we have not made a specific recommendation, but nationally we have been communicating nationally every day or several times a day with my counterparts across the country.
Queensland's considering it as well, is it fair to say? We're considering it?
We are looking at all options.
Have you stopped putting exposure signs out as well? Is that confident?
My understanding from the public health people is that exposure sites are still being published, but we are definitely pulling back on the amount of contact tracing that we are doing. We made significant changes to our contact tracing policy on Christmas Eve, and this should have had some positive impact on the hospitality sector. I had hoped. I saw some media this morning suggesting there was still some problems with staff in the hospitality sector. Certainly, we made changes to some of our recommendations on Christmas Eve, and we're looking into that further today. I spoke with our public health officers this morning at 7 a.m. to make sure that these changes had been effectively communicated.
Why are you pulling back though? Can you explain that reasoning, and what classifies as a high risk setting that the contact tracing will be looking at? How do you qualify?
So, as this pandemic develops and advances, it has always been the intention to slowly carefully pull back all of our public health measures. We have to do it in a controlled manner. It's not a matter of removing all measures at once, but we're doing it in a controlled way. And every day we look at all of these measures and we pull back slowly to ensure that that it occurs in a safe manner. We know that there are large numbers of people in quarantine, and we cannot afford to allow the functioning of the state to seize up. We will not allow that to happen, and that is why we are looking at these measures on a daily basis.
Is there a possibility that rapid antigen tests will be used for contacts in the coming weeks?
Almost certainly will be using the use of rapid antigen tests will be more widely used. The value of rapid antigen tests is, as I'm sure most Australians are now aware, is in the context of wide-scale transmission of the virus. They are not as sensitive as PCR, so they can miss a proportion of positive cases. But in the context of wide-scale transmission, that's where they start to become useful, and we're entering that phase now.
A lot of people are reporting they're having trouble finding a rapid antigen test in Sydney, Adelaide. What about people who can't get their hands on them?
They are required to perform a rapid antigen test before they come to Queensland. That's what I can say.
Given your forecast or expectations around just how widespread Omicron will become, what would you say, what advice would you give to those with double vaccination in terms of whether they're better off getting Omicron and developing the antibody response naturally, as it were, or getting the booster shot, or both?
Oh no, I would be getting the booster. I've had my booster dose, so I would definitely be getting the booster dose if you're entitled to it. And as we know from the 3rd or 4th of January, then the day is brought forward to the timing is brought forward to 4 months.
Is that a wives' tale then? If you get Omicron, you're immune. What would you say to people who've had it?
That sounds like the old stories of chickenpox parties. That's not.
Encourage people not to think.
I mean, no. We encourage people to get the 3rd dose.
Can you just clarify a bit more detail as to what contact tracing efforts are now being made? What environments will you be contacting? What environments won't you be contacting?
I'd rather not go into specific details of what we're doing, because it's complex. And there's also today we're just reviewing a further document that is about to be issued to this to the public health officers. So generally, in broad terms, we are pulling back to isolating those who are sick and their immediate household contacts. That is the main group that we are contacting. So the broader contact tracing is gradually being pulled back.
So why should people check in then at the moment if they're not going to be contacted?
They can still become aware that there are other people in the environment where they have been positive. But we are pulling back and we are focusing more on those who are infected and their immediate household contacts.
So just clarifying flow-on effect a bit, so you're looking less at...
Leave that conference there, and hey, I do miss Dr. Jeanette Young. Moving on, right now, as we know, there are long queues for the testings where they are still being happening. So as you can see there, for miles, there are people, parked on the side. Some of them, stayed there overnight to get in the line for that testing. So looking at all of these and the rules that are changing on a daily basis, as was mentioned in the press conference, what do we need to do? How do we, keep our immune system up to date?
Donna Dyson says her lifestyle dramatically changed when the pandemic hit.
In the way that I'm eating, the way that I'm exercising.
After suffering multiple strokes, the added risk of COVID-19 made the Brisbane woman really think about her immune system.
That was a better one.
It's something experts say we should all be considering as we begin to live with the virus.
Everyone has been looking for magic cures to boost the immune system and been promoting things, but there really is no quick fix or holy grail. It's a diversity, a range of things we do to keep healthy.
This includes a balanced diet, regular exercise and enough sleep.
Change needs to be sustainable and realistic, so that you've got to keep on doing it. There's not much point in aiming for something that you're only going to do for a few weeks.
He says it's important we don't skip any food groups, including carbohydrates, and we should aim to have a variety of plant foods each week. It can be as simple as swapping a lettuce for a 4-salad mix, a tin of chickpeas for a 4-bean mix, and mixed nuts versus cashews.
One of those diets that has a lot of evidence for it is the Mediterranean diet, because it does contain that. It contains good oils and lots of tomatoes and salads and adequate amounts of meat and not too much, and fish.
The same mantra applies to our fitness: balance.
It is possible if you go in and you go all guns blazing, it can be too much, and then obviously you get fairly fatigued and worn down, and it actually has that detrimental effect on your health.
The recommendation is about 150 minutes a week, but it doesn't have to all be in 30 minutes by 5 days a week. It is good to do some more intense exercise to get a puff, but it counts just as much to be active, to walk up that flight of stairs, to actively commute, to walk to the bus, to get to work.
We will be exposed to the virus, and I think it's really important to ensure that we do everything that we can do while we're well.
A major incentive to stick to those New Year's resolutions next year. Melanie Vujkovic, ABC.
And of course, it is the balanced diet, keeping fit, and of course the daily exercise. I couldn't agree more with that. So that is just a wonderful. Right now, Police Commissioner is speaking, so we'll join that conference.
And we'll go from there. So as of 5 o'clock this morning, 471,866 GB applications were made, and remember this is from the hotspot areas, so it's not including WA, South Australia, Tasmania and T. It's just Victoria, New South Wales and ACT. Some other statistics, just get them right for you. Bear with me guys, I just want to make sure I get the right ones. Okay. 31,998 vehicles intercepted on our borders. 120 of those were turned around. 410 heavy vehicles, 3 of those were turned around after intercepts. Yesterday, across airports across Queensland, 204 flights from hotspot areas, some 11,250 passengers, and we expect those numbers to continue. 7 were refused entry, and this really comes down to people not doing the right thing in terms of coming into Queensland. 113 were put into quarantine, and as we've spoken before, some people get on the flight honestly believing they'll get their result back in time, and if they don't, we make sure they're in quarantine until their result does come back. I want to touch on one other thing, is compliance in terms of mask wearing has been exceptionally good in some areas, but not so good in other areas. Can I please ask that everyone continues to wear masks where it's required of them? We handed out 143 yesterday. We will continue to hand them out. We'll always take a very educated approach to this, but at the end of the day, if you're doing the wrong thing, you will be issued with an infringement notice. Any questions before I go back?
Commissioner,
yes.
It seems like it's an honesty system for this rapid antigen test.
It's definitely a declaration. A declaration means that you are telling the truth. If you make a false declaration, obviously you will be issued with an infringement notice. If you are intercepted at the airport, questions will be, when did you have the test? Where was it? At what time? Etc. So I ask everyone to abide by the requirements of the declaration, and if they're found to be obviously making a false declaration, they will be heavily fined. The fines are over $1,400.
Commissioner, given the speed...
It's going to be hard to prove, though, that people are lying about the declaration.
Not necessarily. It's we've had many people already, obviously given infringement notice for false declaration. Once those questions start happening, people have to come up with some evidence as to when they've, actually done that, where they've done it, etc.
Commissioner, this will all be a moot point within days, won't it, given the speed with which Queensland's approaching that 90% double vaccination level when no test will be required. I mean, when do you seriously expect? Mid-January has always been touted. Are you expecting this just to last a few days anyway for the rapid antigen?
I think we're all hoping it's lasting for a few days. I think we're all looking forward to the 90%, but it is still incredibly important. The day that we opened up on the 13th of December was quite incredible. The second those relaxed restrictions came in, COVID was immediately into the state. So these restrictions, until we get to 90%, are still incredibly important. And they may be a week or 2 or 3 or 4, but definitely we're heavily committed to this in ensuring that, we reduce the spread of it in Queensland.
Is there any advantage for people from the hotspot states if they've had the booster shot, or still got to play by the same rules?
I think it's important that we play by the advice from the CHO. I've had the booster, the Moderna, a couple of weeks ago, and a lot of my staff have.
So that doesn't give anybody special privileges?
Certainly doesn't give it special privileges. We expect everyone to be telling the truth. Any false declaration will be dealt with, obviously, heavy infringement notices.
How many fines have been issued now for non-mask wearing excluded to before?
I'll get you the totality. There was one overnight. And the reason why I talk about masks is there are people who are going into shopping centres, restaurants, and when they've been asked to put a mask on, have been quite aggressive and refused to, and obviously police get called to those, and we will take action.
Have any businesses been fined for not following the vaccine mandates, people entering their business?
Certainly, there's a business just in the last few days in Toowoomba. The owner was given a notice to appear to go to court for that very, very reason, blatantly disregarding the requirements of the direction. I've been on the Gold Coast and I went through three separate restaurants, and every one of them asked me for my check-in as well as my double vaccination.
So yes, I will vouch for that as well, because I did go down for lunch the other day, and I was asked not only for the check-in but also to check the proof of vaccination, which is now available on your phone. You can have your Medicare attached to your vaccine certificate, and so that is one wonderful way to go. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now, before we go into the bonus track for today, and we also have the upcoming events, right now it's time to get a message from our sponsors for this segment, and you too can be a sponsor of the segment if you so wish.
ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी 1989 से लेकर अब तक का विश्वसनीय और माननीय ब्रिस्बेन का रियल एस्टेट एजेंट है। उषा चंद्रा, जो कि ग्लोबनेट की डायरेक्टर है, अपने ग्राहकों को ईमानदार और एथिक सर्विसेज देती हैं। अगर आप ब्रिस्बेन की प्रॉपर्टी में पूंजी लगाना चाहते हैं और आप चाहते हैं कि आपकी प्रॉपर्टी को प्रोफेशनली मैनेज किया जाए, तो आप आज ही कांटेक्ट कीजिए उषा चंद्रा को। लैंडलाइन नंबर है 38654466 और मोबाइल नंबर है 0419775416। और आप प्रॉपर्टी की अधिक जानकारी और करंट अपडेट्स के लिए हमारी वेबसाइट पे लॉगिन कर सकते हैं। हमारी वेबसाइट है www.globnetreality.com.au। ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी आपका अपना लोकल रियल एस्टेट एजेंट है। हमारा पता है ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी, शॉप नंबर 5, 2281 Sandgate Road, Bundall, Queensland. Globenet Reality. Real estate is our world.
And it is. Don't forget that coming back on January, we will start the weekly real estate updates with Usha Chandra there as well. Right now, it's time to look at some of the functions and events taking place. there you are, ladies and gentlemen, up to date on Australian Indian Radio, and I'd like to thank you all for your company this morning. Yes, it is morning here in Brisbane, and the temperature is 25 degrees, partly cloudy, still looking pretty good from where I sit, looking out the window on both sides. To my right, the Howard Street Wharfs, and straight in front of me, looking onto the valley area. It's just amazing sights from here, and 25 degrees and partly cloudy. It wasn't as cold this morning as it was yesterday. It was cold and raining, and this morning was still windy, but yesterday we got some very, very gusty winds happening. Well, as promised, here's the bonus track. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen, the bonus track, as I mentioned, and that was just off the cuff, just with the phone camera there. Wonderful to have your company today. Of course, welcoming everyone who've been watching and joined us for the full show today. Don't forget that on the 31st, we have from 6 p.m. till 7 p.m. the anniversary session of our Music Junction presented by RJ Savi. That will be a wonderful show, and introducing Neha Shah with some wonderful numbers, and we'll also do a roundup of all the music junctions that have taken place throughout the year. So right now it's time to say goodbye until tomorrow. Don't forget that from January we will resume all regular shows, including the weekly travel updates, the weekly real estate updates, Migration Ka Safar, and Aapki Sehat, which is your health. All the normal segments will resume in January. Until that time, it will be mainly our daily news updates. Even our daily India report from PIO TV will resume probably from the 4th of January. So until tomorrow, it's goodbye from me. Wonderful to have your company.